quarter of a century ago, what it was. And it's amazing to think how much has changed in that time. It's one of those things, especially when I have young folks on the tour, and I try to tell them, I say, you know, in the old days when we used to go to the airport, it used to be fun. You know? Remember showing up early to the airport was like, maybe I'll get there 30 minutes before my flight, just so I make sure I can navigate the airport because you get lost. That was like the only thing.
Or meet grandma at the gate.
And you would meet, and you'd have to meet your family at the gate. I used to fly down to Florida when I was a kid, and I would my parents would send me there alone, and I was 8, and they'd put me on the plane alone. And my dad, he'd get on the plane with me, because there's no security. He'd get on the plane, and he'd buckle me in, he'd say, see you, Jimmy, and then my uncle would get me in Florida, he'd get on the plane, and he'd get me on. It was a different world. I have, when I was a kid growing up, my best friend's father was from Ireland, and he told me he used to sneak to the U.S. on flights all the time. He'd sneak here. And I said, how'd you sneak here? And he goes, oh, well, I was friends with the bartender at the airport, and, you know, he just had a key to the back door. And I'm like, all right, yeah? And he goes, yeah, I just sneak on the plane. And he goes, I said, what happened when the flight crew got over? And he goes, oh, they'd say, hey, Paul.
Been there before.
They didn't, nobody cared. It was just a different world. It was just a different world. And it's just amazing to think of. Now, it's interesting because I asked my dad, and I said, did you ever have a moment in your life where the world changed the next day, where there was an event where you remember exactly where you were, exactly what you were doing? And everyone around the world remembers that same moment, too. My dad said, yeah. He said, when JFK was assassinated. He remembers exactly what he was doing. My dad told me when JFK was assassinated, he said he was playing pinball in the pinball hall, back when those used to exist. And he said on the radio they were playing John Lennon's Imagine, which that kid was playing as we walked in. You know how much I paid that little kid to play that song?
Yeah, here you go, bud. I got you perfect too.
And he said they interrupted it to make the announcement on the radio. I asked my grandfather the same question. I said, did you ever have a moment in your life where the world changed the next day? You remember exactly what you were doing? My grandfather said, yeah. Pearl Harbor. We got attacked on Pearl Harbor. And my grandfather, it was his birthday. My grandfather's birthday was December 2nd. And he just turned 21, and he was out with his buddies for a drink. And the next day he went and enlisted in the war, went off to the war. And my grandfather nicknamed when he was in the war all the people he was in the Air Corps. All the folks in the Air Corps used to call him Old Man. Because he was 21, and they were 17. So back in 2001, I was a kid. I was 13 years old. I was a teenager, right? And if you remember back in those days, kids didn't really have cell phones. That wasn't really a normal thing yet. Remember when I got to high school, kids just started getting cell phones? I didn't have them. All the kids with money had cell phones. Remember back in the old days that cell phones didn't have news on them? A lot of them didn't even have texting. You could make phone calls, and you had one game on the phone. Remember that game? Snake. It was Snake, man. Everybody played Snake. That was it. You make a call, play Snake. So nobody knew what was going on. That's what I tell people. We didn't know what was happening. And they did not want to tell us in school what was happening. They did not want to inform you if you had a family member that was working inside of you. They wanted your own family to be able to tell you. So they didn't tell us. There was an announcement over the loudspeaker. It said, come down to the main office. It said, wait in your desks. Everybody wait in your desks. Class is canceled. And ignore the bells, otherwise you would have been changing classrooms. So we're like, oh, that's weird. We then, in that morning, felt the ground shake. Felt like what I can imagine an earthquake would be like. I've never experienced an earthquake because we don't have them in New York City. And I've been to California, but I never experienced an earthquake, obviously. But it felt like the ground was shaking. That was when the buildings were rising.
How far away was